Welcome to Insight, produced in partnership with Howard University's WHUT. Today we are chatting with Jon White, President and CEO of the Consortium of Ocean Leadership. Jon has generously agreed to share some of his experience with us. I'd like to thank you, Jon, for joining us today.
It's an honor and a pleasure. Thanks, Mark.
So the ocean is pervasive. It affects all of us, but sometimes we just walk through our day and we don't think about the air we breathe, the food we eat, and the weather we experience and how the ocean affects that. Talk about the ocean in the context of how it affects all of us today.
First of all, of course, the ocean covers about 71% of our planet. We are largely a land species that is living on an ocean planet. But in order to be successful, and we have shown in order to actually be successful, we need to understand that ocean. We need to use that ocean for our own health and prosperity, our commerce, the food that we eat, and we do that on a day-to-day basis. And I think we're just now starting to come to grips with the importance of ensuring the ocean can really continue to support us and our fellow species on the land in the future. As we grow in terms of our population, but we rely so much for food, for water, for energy, of course, whether it's oil and gas that comes out of the ocean floor, it's energy that we're able to get from waves, and more we're looking at the ocean in terms of an energy source for renewable energy as well, offshore wind farms and these type of things. So it's just understanding that and having everybody, every human that lives on this planet understand the importance of the ocean, I think can allow us to ensure that we don't do things and make decisions to damage the ocean and actually to prevent it from being the resource that we need today and are going to need going forward for all those reasons.
How do we now start to change ourselves so that we are better stewards of the ocean?
One way we change ourselves is to make sure that the problem is being heard and understood, that I think much of our population, as you mentioned at the beginning of the conversation, doesn't understand the scope of the problem, the scope of the ocean,
or how important it is to their lives.
How important it is to their everyday lives. So we have to also make people understand that we need to use science to impact our decision making, whether to drill or not to drill, whether to fish or not to fish, whether to build something along a coastline or not.
Based on data and evidence.
Based on data and evidence. But all that in understanding to be able to actually predict that is scientific. It's based on scientific research. So the importance of scientific research, and that's what we are, is really a consortium of about 95 ocean science and ocean technology institutions, academic and otherwise. We need to champion that knowledge. That knowledge provides the key to solving these problems, to being a better steward. But if you don't understand what the science is telling you, you don't invest in the science to give us better and better answers, then you're still going to be making, just like 30 years ago, we made actual decisions on whether to evacuate with an oncoming hurricane maybe 2 days in advance. Now we're making it 5 days in advance. That's due to scientific research. By the way, not just about the atmosphere, because hurricanes, really, they form over the ocean, and it's the ocean is the energy source. So, but understanding those type of things allow us to make better decisions, long-term and short-term, and really be better stewards, understanding what is happening. So in terms of coral bleaching, we talked about, okay, we see it happening. Why is it happening? Why is it happening to this reef and not that reef? Can we learn something from the reef that is still healthy and be able to go in and treat the other one? Can we do that in enough time and over a large enough area to really have a positive impact? Or if not, what are we going to do about it? Same thing with fisheries, with species that are overfished. Same thing with our coastlines and understanding in detail. So a lot of this is really championing the science, and that's what we do is, we try to shape the future of ocean science and technology to help answer those problems and questions.
It seems that we also have another challenge ahead of us as Americans. We tend to choose the short-term thinking over long-term thinking so often. We choose quarterly profits over profits that we think might accrue over 3, 5, and 10-year periods. We choose the good of tomorrow over behaviors that will be more sustainable. It seems to me that we can have all the evidence in the world over here, but if the evidence in the world is all about long-term health and long-term good and be able to function as society, whereas over here we can function as individuals and profit ourselves, we individually, as Americans, too often seem to choose the short term.
I think part of that is human nature, but we say this a lot in the military as well, is that that we sacrifice the important as we over-focus on the urgent. And sometimes we do that as well. And then, if sea level is rising, and I say, well, I'm just going to raise my home by a foot, or I'm going to build a seawall. At some point, maybe you got to think about, well, if my children or even my grandchildren are going to live in this house, maybe is there an opportunity to move it somewhere or to relocate, and how would I plan for doing that?
This is not seeing the forest for the trees. This is where tactics overshadow strategy, and you lose sight of what you're trying to accomplish.
But there's got to be a balance, and that's why I think it's important for our federal government to ensure that we're balancing those urgent needs with the important longer-term strategic interests. Again, whether it's relation to energy, water, all these type of security issues, and human health as well. All these things we need to maintain that long view, while we certainly have to resolve the crisis, the aftermath of a hurricane or some other event, fires that have happened in California. We have to deal with that. But long term, how do we understand it better? Are there weather patterns that are shifting because of climate shifts that are going to create more fires in certain regions, that we could have better solutions and better understanding of what's going to happen in advance, so we can move resources to try to prevent damages like that? These are the type of longer term things that I think you're right. We miss those a lot of times as we focus on what's going to happen tomorrow, what happened yesterday, what are the urgent needs.
How do you get people to come together and say, something, we're going to invest for 100 years before our children's children's children see any impact?
I lose sleep, and we have a lot of conversations on dealing with exactly that problem, Mark, of how do we influence the individual thinking and decision making and the understanding. Again, part of our keywords and our basic part of our mission is, advance, like I said, it's shape the future of ocean science and technology through discovery, understanding, and action. That understanding is the key piece there, understanding the scope of the problem, and getting away from, again, this, short-term, immediate sort of return on the investment of my time and the money, the resources, and all this. We focus on these things more and more. It seems like it's a right now
monetizing a fishery until the fishery collapses, right?
Yeah, exactly. But not having the long view of, okay, what am I going to do? What are as you said, my sons and daughters, their sons and daughters. We've been in the fishing business for decades. A great example of that is, there was a gentleman who's given a lot of talks he did for us, who his family had been in the lobster business in Long Island Sound for many, many years, for several generations. The lobsters weren't there anymore. So he's sitting around there, well, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to have to move. Or, somebody mentioned, the scallops and stuff grow on the same kind of structures as those lobster pots that you're not catching any lobster with. So he had an idea, what if I started farming for scallops, using the same baskets, wooden baskets in this case, what scallops really like to adhere to. And now he's got a profitable business of farming the ocean, which we can talk about. And that's one of the key things. Sustainably farming the ocean that's really an opportunity for food security.
As opposed to extracting.
As opposed to just overfishing and extracting. We learned this again on land about a century ago. If you just go out and you shoot everything and eat it, or you rip everything that you can eat off of the landscape. That doesn't work, especially with a growing population, whether it's due you know, to a lot of people coming over to a developing country like we had in our country. You learn to cultivate and farm, and that's a much better model, and sustainably, so that as you use wood from trees, you're growing more trees. As you eat fish, you're growing more fish. By the way, it also allows the natural habitats to be much more healthy. The fishermen and everything, you know, there's a balance to all
Well, maybe
this.
that's part of the key, is finding a different way that does not say economics bad, earning money bad. I mean, that's not going to work, right?
No, because we all love to, you know.
Well, we all have to put
Be
bread on the
comfortable.
table.
Yep.
So that isn't the approach. So maybe the approach is to find a different way of thinking, where you honor the economic activity, but you also encourage people to think in the way that this gentleman is thinking. How do you farm as opposed to extract?
One of the real, I think we have an opportunity now is also more and more to look at social science and social scientists and bring them together with the physical scientists, if you will, the ocean scientists, agricultural scientists, so that, because, you know, I like to think that I understand people and I'm a pretty good judgment of character and all these type of things. But boy, I make mistakes all the time, not just at home with my own family, of trying to understand how they're going to respond to scientific evidence or something that I say, for example. But there are people who are really good at that, who study that, who understand the psychology, whether it's individuals or larger populations, and populations at different places. Because that's another thing. We're so different around the world. So what may work in Norway may not work on the Gulf of Mexico coast. It may not work in Africa or Indonesia or somewhere else. It's understanding how to bring world population, like, and even our national population. We're pretty diverse, as we all know, in terms of our opinions, in terms of our beliefs, whether political or otherwise, but certainly science as well. How do we bring social experts to get those messages, to educate people, not just about the science, but about understanding the larger problems, and then how does it impact their overall decisions? And to think about, yes, this does impact my children.
Jon White, thank you so much for sharing the work of the Consortium of Ocean Leadership. Thank you so much for describing this balanced approach that you wish to take. And really our hearts and minds are with you, because the health of the ocean and your success in drawing people together in this effort is so important to us, to our daily lives and to the lives of future generations. Thank you so much for sharing the work of the Consortium of Ocean Leadership with us, and thank you so much.
It's been an honor, and I hope I get passionate about this, and I could go on for days, but hopefully I can share a little bit of my enthusiasm and passion. It's a little bit contagious as well, because I think there's a positive message to go on top of the concern here. So thanks for the opportunity to talk to you, Mark.